Back on Tuesday, From Software dropped the story trailer for the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, which means it's time for us to do what Soulsborne fans do best, and completely overanalyze 3 minutes of esoteric details. Let's dive in. In reviewing this trailer, I think it would be fair to say that you can divide it into 3 sections, each centered around a different member of Elden Ring's divine family. There's the Marika section, the Mesmer section, and the Miquella section. Mother, son, and holy child, if you will. To kick off the Marika section, we hear an unknown narrator talking about how kind Miquella spoke of the events that they, in turn, are about to tell us. So all of this information, everything we hear about in this trailer, is part of a story Miquella told his followers. Specifically, he spoke of the beginning, of the seduction and betrayal, an affair that gave birth to both gold and shadow. So, tying all of that together, what this appears to mean is that Miquella has been talking some mad shit on Marika. He discovered the origins of her order, the Golden Order, and has passed down this forgotten truth to his disciples. This is supported by the imagery as well. I've seen some people speculating that this character is Miquella, but I doubt it. I'm fairly certain it's Marika. That's her signature armband, her trademark dress, and of course, her Goldilocks-length blonde hair. We see her pull what looks like a lock of hair or a strand of thread from what is very obviously a womb, then walk over a field of blood and between 2 piles of corpses, which, curiously enough, seem to take the shape of the door that leads inside the Erdtree. There, this lock of golden hair, or thread, appears to power up and take shape into the rune arc that can be found at the top of the Elden Ring, the very same symbol that, in the ultimate irony, we find Marika imprisoned upon at the end of the base game. Many theorists, such as tarnished archaeologists, have speculated that Marika's personal rune was the Rune of Life. I think what we're seeing here is the creation of that rune. We know that over the eons, the Elden Ring has taken different forms, and that new runes have been added to and subtracted from it depending on the whims of the god housing the ring and their Elden Lord, as described in the various item descriptions that tell the tale of the Rune of Death. Like a Black Widow, it appears she offered up the goods, used her partner to create her personal rune, and then killed them when the deed was done. An ironic origin to the Rune of Life, if there ever was one. As for who the wound belongs to, your guess is as good as mine, but it looks draconic to me, which would fit both with From Software's tradition of dragon-human unions and the fact that the Elden Lord during this era might have been Placidusax, who himself is a dragon. This sequence of events would also seem to be some ammunition for those who believe that Marika and Radagon were always the same person. I don't think I need to take us back to 6th grade health class, so I'll keep it simple and say that in order for the rune to have gestated inside the womb Marika pulls it from, the seducing and dalliance that followed would have needed the participation of a man. Hence, Radagon. And it might just be a trick of the light, but it does appear that the ends of Marika's hair in this shot are red, again supporting this theory. Now, back to the piles of corpses. As mentioned, their positioning calls to mind the door that leads inside the Erdtree. In the modern-day lands between, Erdtree burial is a sacred act, the highest honor a hero can receive. Perhaps the dark and terrible truth here is that this process works because the Erdtree has always been made of corpses, and these were just the first Marika used to bring the golden tree into being. So, in under a minute, Miyazaki and his madmen seem to be painting a pretty clear picture here, that the Golden Order is a lie, and that even the Rune of Life was built on a foundation of blood and death. This alone would be reason enough for Miquella to forge his own path. But of course, the history of the Lands of Shadow and what Marika did there only gets darker from here. Now, on to the Mesmer chapter of the trailer. We're then told that an unseen war followed Marika's actions, one that would never be put to song. This coupled with the previous line about the birth of gold and shadow, might indicate that it was Marika's creation of the Rune of Life that separated the lands of shadow from the lands between. But personally, I don't quite buy that. I suspect this, more simply, means that two orders arose from her seduction and betrayal, the Golden Order and the Shadow Order, and that the two forces met on the field of battle in a hellish bloodbath that the victor, Marika's side, dared not speak of, because the atrocities they committed on the losers were indeed that vicious. This is supported by the fact that the narrator describes it as a purge. So in all likelihood, Marika's side won pretty quickly, and then put the remaining loyalists down with the tyranny of Mesmer's flame. And that's exactly what we see here in this part of the trailer. This isn't a battle. This isn't a siege. This is a mass execution of a defeated enemy. There's not much resistance going on here, just slaughter. Curiously, the narrator also says that the war was without grace, capitalized. This would seem to imply that Marika's war was won without the guidance of grace, without the prior approval of the greater will. She surely wasn't a lowly tarnished in her youth, but perhaps she was indeed an usurper, emboldened by the flame of ambition. This actually checks out quite nicely with what we know of the greater will. As others have stated, the greater will doesn't seem to really care what order rules over the lands between, only that there is one. Think of it as a super organized and gold-obsessed version of Khorne from Warhammer, who famously cares not from where the blood flows, only that it does. So actually, it wouldn't be a surprise at all if Marika's war wasn't approved of by the greater will at the onset, but that it fell in line anyway when she ascended to godhood. In the shots, we see Mesmer using his trademark flame to torch these loyalists and their city. Some have speculated that this might be the Glomide Queen, but I'm still inclined to think that the Glomide Queen was an Empyrean who rebelled against Marika later in her rule, and not the leader of the faction she put down after first becoming a god. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. Regardless, Mesmer is attacked by the Lion Dance boss from the previous trailer. The fact that he quickly puts it down may indicate that the Lion Dance bosses were, at one time, fairly common in the Lands of Shadow, and that we might end up fighting several of them in the DLC. Or that the one we'll be facing off with is the last of them. Either way, Mesmer does his thing and impales this one, before saluting the Shadow Tree, where, from this angle, we see what appears to be Marika's symbol, her Rune of Life, hanging from it. As I see it, there are three ways you can interpret this. The first thing that came to my mind is that Marika's Rune of Life is hanging from the Shadow Tree, the chief symbol of her defeated enemies, like a victory banner. Just as an invading force would throw up the heraldry of their lord after capturing a castle, perhaps Marika's armies did the same thing here. But upon close inspection, it does seem like someone might be hanging up there on the Rune of Life, which raises two possibilities. Either it's Marika, and she's up there windmill dunking on her rivals, and holy shit, that would be a grimdark debut for the Rune of Life if there ever was one, or it's the defeated leader of the Shadow Tree faction. And in that case, Marika's eventual imprisonment in this same position becomes, once again, all the more ironic. And now, finally, on to the Miquella section. We're told the kind Miquella has abandoned everything, his golden flesh, his blinding strength, and even his fate, all in an effort to come here, to the Lands of Shadow. We see what appears to be his rune in multiple locations, which seems to give credence to the idea that they might serve as replacements for sites of grace in the lands between, as well as Miquella himself, still in child form, and a person who can only be Saint Trina, falling down from above and bathed in purple. Interestingly, Saint Trina seems to be in a position that calls to mind an inverted version of the lily named in her honor. We already know that Saint Trina will be in the DLC. Miyazaki confirmed it in an interview, and though it's unclear what their role will be, it's still cool to see them represented in art like this. The speaker then tells us that despite Miquella's journey to this forsaken land, they are not deterred, and still choose to follow him. The trailer then closes on a shot featuring several characters we saw separately in the previous trailer, a landscape view of the Lands of Shadow, and a final question: will you walk with us? In other videos, specifically my Harrowing of the Shadowlands video, which I'll link below, I've speculated that what Miquella is up to here might be inspired by the Harrowing of Hell, the scarcely discussed chapter of Christian theology where Christ goes down to hell to rescue the souls of the prophets from the Old Testament. I think we see some more evidence of that here. Miquella's rune includes a cross, which is obviously evocative of Christian imagery, and I don't think it's a stretch to describe these folks here as the Apostles of Miquella. Though we don't yet know why they followed his footsteps despite the danger to the Lands of Shadow, just as Christ's early adherents traveled wherever he went. But as many have pointed out, and as referenced by a different NPC in the first trailer, Miquella does seem to have a darker side to him, a side that compels affection. Which brings me to two questions. First, if Miquella can really compel affection, is it possible that these people are not following him of their own free will, but instead have been enchanted to do so? And if everything we've learned in this trailer is told to us by one of Miquella's bewitched followers, then how can we be sure that this isn't a biased version of events designed to make the nascent Empyrean's enemies sound worse than they actually are? At the same time, Miquella's plan and purpose for coming here in the first place remains a mystery. The speaker doesn't mention it in this trailer, but the poem that accompanied the first trailer says that he awaits his promised lord. Are these NPCs vying to become that promised lord? Or is that a role that's destined for us? Notably, I do have to point out that of the three sections of the trailer, it's Miquella's that is the most devoid of details. Which makes sense. If Miquella's story is at the center of the DLC, then it's only natural for From Software to want to keep information about his plotline under wraps. But it does leave one to wonder what the nascent Empyrean might be hiding from us. I wouldn't be surprised if choosing to support Miquella or oppose him is one of the decisions Miyazaki has suggested we'll have to make in the expansion. This would be pretty interesting, as it could lead to multiple endings or different final bosses depending on the path you take. But to find out for sure, we just have to wait till next month, when Shadow of the Erdtree drops. Thanks for watching. Huge thanks to Alex Roe, who allows all of us Soulsborne YouTubers to use his amazing remixes for our videos. To check out all of his music, just follow the link down below in the description box. Big shout out to my Silver and Gold tier subscribers, including James Pruitt, Raven Lampkin, Corey Matson, Gustavo Balabi, Little Caesar, Reed, and Pathonian, who get early access to these videos thanks to donations of $5 to $10 a month. See you guys next time!